Hi, thanks to all viewers of Equinoxe Television. Is the news hour. We thank you so much for always being with us. Right away, we begin with our major stories. Cameroon today joins other countries the world over to observe the World Press Freedom Day under the theme Shaping Future Rights, Freedom of Expression as a driver for all other human rights. The commemoration is coming on the heels of continuous threats and even assassination of journalists in the course of doing their job. In this edition, we will be coming back to the numerous threats to silence journalists and even on their lives. The case of Martinez Zogo is still very fresh in our minds. And why are women being killed anyhow across the national territory, especially in the central region of the country? And why the silence of the society was still that of the government, especially the Ministry for Women's Empowerment and the Promotion of the Family? Viewers, those are our major stories. Stay with us for details and more. Welcome back, viewers. My name is Anna Bilaleke. We begin by talking about the World Press Freedom Day, which is being observed today. And one of the major problems journalists in Cameroon, especially those of the private media, is access to information. The call for an Access to Information Act has once again been raised by journalists. It is considered as a tool to break the access to information deadlock, so to speak. Babila Jonathan is a man on that beat.
Difficult access to information remains one of the major obstructions to press freedom in Cameroon. Journalists have to brave this stumbling block almost on daily basis in their news gathering exercise.
We're in a country where if you're not connected, it's difficult for you to get information. You get into some offices just to access maybe the manager for him to tell you what that company is all about, their activities, or maybe their editor or their policies. It becomes so difficult accessing information, be it government or even private offices around town.
It's not every time that you knock the doors of public authorities that they are always ready to open those doors and give you the information that you need for your news or for any program that you are running. I think that it's a big problem because press freedom cannot be guaranteed in an environment where access to information is limited.
Another problem is what is described as discrimination between public and private media organs, particularly by government officials. This makes it even more difficult for private media journalists to access information.
It's really difficult for those in the private sector to get information as compared to those in the public media outlet to get information.
The private press as an entity has to come up and decry it so that whatever point that this discrimination is coming from, it should be dealt with. I think that will mark the end of it, because if it continues this way, the Cameroonian public will be short of information.
Thus, the call for a Freedom of Access to Information Act. To many journalists, the legal instrument and its proper implementation will solve the problem and guarantee the people's right to information.
What that act is here is not only the government ministries, the corporate world, because people need to have information. As you're working and reporting, the people, the public need to know. It is their right to know. So if the Access to Information Act is enacted, I think it will help the people.
To enhance the contribution of the media in the protection of human rights, these journalists of the Cameroon English-Speaking Journalists Association Douala chapter are being edified on freedom of expression, a driver of all other rights.
And we continue talking about the World Press Freedom Day today. Journalists in Cameroon are increasingly facing oppression, threats, attacks, illegal detentions, and even killing of reporters. Journalists blame the senior state officials for what they say are increasing media abuses and attempts to silence reporters. Reporters Without Borders say Cameroon is the worst jailer of journalists in Africa. For me, I'm Strong Sander. Tells us more.
Reporters Without Borders classify Cameroon as having one of the most dangerous media landscape on the African continent. while the Committee to Protect Journalists, the CPJ, says Cameroon is among the worst jailers of journalists on the continent. In Cameroon, journalists face oppression, threats, attacks, illegal detentions, and the killing of reporters. In January this year 2023, the mutilated dead body of radio presenter Martinez Zogo was found on the outskirts of the city of Yaoundé, Cameroon's political capital, 5 days after he went missing. Zogo, an outspoken critic of institutionalized corruption, had denounced on air a case of suspected embezzlement of public funds involving top government officials and some individuals with strong government connections. But before dust could settle on the Martinez Zogo abduction and assassination, a second radio presenter, Jean-Jacques Olabebe, was found dead near his home in Yaoundé with signs of bullet wounds on his body. The two killings came to add to that of Buea-based journalist Samuel Wazizi, arrested and held incommunicado in Yaoundé for several months. Wazizi was only admitted dead by the government of Cameroon on June 2022 after an exclusive outburst from Equinoxe radio and television. Wazizi had died in custody in August 2019. It remains unclear if, how, or when he was buried. Some, however, survived assassination and death, like Yaoundé-based journalist Paul Shooter, abducted, tortured, and horribly disfigured by unknown individuals in Yaoundé in 2017. In 2019, Shooter was held for 2 years at the Kundigi Maximum Security Prison. He was later sentenced to 23 months in a defamation case marred by fair trial violations, according to rights groups. Like Shooter, former Equinoxe Radio and Television's English desk editor Mimi Mefo was arrested and held at the notorious Newberg Central Prison in the city of Douala for days. The Committee to Protect Journalists says Cameroon currently detains over 5 journalists at the dreaded Kundenge Central Prison, among which 4 are held on anti-state charges in connection to the ongoing crisis in the English-speaking Northwest and Southwest regions. Except several journalists have been forced into exile, while those who brave it to stay in Cameroon are routinely attacked, threatened, and censored. In 2022, for example, Equinoxe Radio and Television's editor-in-chief Serge Alain Otto received threats and threatening messages for receiving a diaspora-based activist, Calibri Calibro, on his widely viewed program Equinoxe Soir. The threat and censorship has been persistent, with another example being last November 2022 that saw the Minister of Territorial Administration prescribing severe censorship of the Douala-based People's Channel, Equinoxe TV. The Committee to Protect Journalists say Cameroon comes only after Eritrea and Egypt as the worst jailer of journalists on the African continent.
Thank you so much for me, Armstrong Sander, for that report. And we continue talking about the threats on the lives of journalists in Cameroon. The assassination of journalist Martinez Zogo is still very fresh in the minds of Cameroonian journalists who joined the international community today, May 3, to observe the World Press Freedom Day. What journalists want is total justice for Martinez Zogo and for other journalists who are in detention. Innocent Aza in the report which comes up next looks at where the Martinez Zogo affair is at the moment.
Journalists in Cameroon joined their peers nationwide on May 3rd to observe World Press Freedom Day with the gruesome assassination of one of theirs, Martinez Zogo, in January 2023, still fresh in their minds. National and international condemnations led to the arrest and trial of some prominent figures and a renowned business guru, Pierre Amogu Belinga. Principal suspects alleged to have commanded the kidnap and torture of the Amplitude FM manager. Lawyers of Amogu Belinga had appealed for the release of their clients on bail for the first time, but this was rejected. They tried for the second time on April 27, but failed, implying their clients would have to remain in pre-trial detention until the Martinez assassination case file is opened. Investigators are still digging deep to know who actually commanded the kidnapping, who tortured and who assassinated Martinez Zogo and mutilated his body. After the Yaoundé military court found them guilty of complicity in torture by 8, the culprits were ferried to the principal prison in Koundengui, Yaoundé on pre-trial detention. While there, lawyers of Amogo Belinga mounted pressure on investigators for a copy of this case file, but were denied. The quest for the release of Amogo Belinga by his lawyers will again be discussed in court on May 11. Meantime, the Martinez Defense Counsel has vowed to keep a keen eye on their opponents to make sure they do not corrupt the legal proceedings, already strangulating their clients.
Thank you, Innocent Ase, for that report. Journalism is not a crime. All what journalists want is a free press. And we told you in the headlines, viewers, that femicide cases are on the rise in Cameroon. Unofficial statistics indicate that at least 25 women have been murdered within 71 days in Cameroon. Immaculate Fogo, in the report which comes up next, cites cases of femicides in several parts of the country, with the highest cases being reported in Yaoundé, Douala, and Bafoussam.
Yaoundé, Douala, and Bafoussam are the major epicenters of femicide in Cameroon. Cases of murder made especially on women have been on the rise. Within 71 days, at least 25 women got murdered in these regions. In Bafoussam, precisely in Banengu, the corpse of a woman was discovered. An autopsy carried out on her corpse revealed that she was sexually abused before being killed. Another scene was recorded on March 14th. It was a 14-year-old girl who got raped to death and her corpse deposited in front of a dispensary in the Como neighborhood in Yaoundé. On the 26th of March 2023, a young girl in her 20s was killed while she was on her way back from school. Another case was reported on April 10th. Chantal Massiri got stabbed to death by a Central African boyfriend. On the same day, another case of femicide was reported in Yaoundé. This time around, it was a lady called Egambam Leticia who was killed while she was on her way back home after attending a wedding. In the same vein, a teacher of government bilingual high school Mokolo in the Far North region got stabbed to death by her husband after a dispute. On April 14th, it was the corpse of Alien Guan that was discovered in the Gousso neighborhood in Yaoundé. Another tragic scene was recorded on April 18th. Loic Chameleon Kenmore, a Master 2 student at the University of Yaoundé, was killed while she was on her way back home from school. She got stabbed severely at about 8:30 p.m. Another violent scene recorded on April 25th was in Makak, a village in the Center region. Biaga Micheline was assassinated by her husband after suspecting she was cheating on him. Another case was equally reported in Nanga Eboko. A 32-year-old man reportedly killed Vanessa Yombi, her 3 children, and her kid sister. In Douala, it was a 29-year-old girl who got killed in her tailoring workshop in a place called Bell neighborhood in Bonaberry. She was stabbed to death by an admirer who had not yet declared his intentions. Victorine, who is the eldest daughter of a traditional ruler in Dibene in the Center region, was reportedly raped to death in her apartment. Traces of violence and strangulation were detected on her mortal remains.
Sad incidents, say indeed. The question so many persons are asking is, why are women the target, and why the silence of the government, especially the Ministry of Women's Empowerment and the promotion of the family? Civil society actors in Cameroon blame the rise in femicide cases on government silence and the non-respect of the law. Our reporter Lucille Yengu Esia spoke with a civil society actor, Maximilien Gombe, who condemns the silence of the government.
Despite efforts made by civil society actors to stop the killing and violence on women in Cameroon, violence against women has been on the rise. Recent statistics have proven that from January 2023, about 25 women have been killed. Civil society actors say the situation is getting out of hand.
The government who have the responsibility to protect us, I'm not understand that they are quiet, all them, about this situation. Only in the center, the center region, we have 70 cases. But these 70 cases, because we make the documentation, and maybe we have another which not have documented. How can we explain that in the capital of all these institutions, nothing will be taken about the situation? It's very sad for all of us.
She thinks the government has been silent.
We need just in the grassroots to protect our doctors, our children, our women. And we have the juridic instruments like the penal court here, like international instruments. What's happened? We are not understand nothing about the Minister of Women and Social Affairs, nothing about the National Commission on Human Rights, nothing about the Prime Minister to hold the meeting with the civil society organization to make sure that, or to have their voice to put together the instrument to stop this killing.
Maximilien Gombe also says the government should put in place concrete measures to stop this barbaric act.
We need peace, we need protection, we need cohesion, we need reconciliation. Our focus that the states have the responsibility to make sure that we had peace in our country, we had reconciliation.
Therefore, it is important to visit the Cameroon Constitution, which affirms that women have the right to life, physical and moral integrity, and also human treatment in all circumstances.
Hopefully something will be done on the femicide cases in Cameroon, which have been recurrent lately, and soonest. Now we talk something else. The inhabitants of the Mayo-Sanaga division of the Far North region now have a new senior divisional officer, Tam Likeng Risha Marcel. He was installed at a time when the population is complaining of high insecurity and hardship caused by the frequent Boko Haram attacks, a huge responsibility for him to fight this threat. Our reporter Malaglory tells us that the Boko Haram attacks in the region have led to at least 500 deaths since 2014.
Different localities in the Mayo-Sanaga division of the Far North region in the past few months have experienced frequent attacks from the Boko Haram terrorist group, which has intensified insecurity in this division. The situation has caused a lot of suffering to the population, and they say land grabbing has come to add to their numerous problems. The difficulties we already have in the Mayo-Sanaga division is that of insecurity, especially at the borders, as you already know. Secondly, conflicts of land dispute and poverty. Their plights were presented to the new divisional officer for the Mayo-Sanaga division, Tom Lincoln Richard Marcel, and during his installation ceremony, he was urged by the authorities to fight insecurity in his area of jurisdiction.
To pay attention to Boko Haram. So he has to redynamize the vigilant committee in order to get rid of this Boko Haram, who here and there are still there and causes damage to population. That's the main orientation that have been given to the new deal.
The ceremony was mainly attended by administrative and traditional rulers from other parts of the division, with a resounding absence from those of the town of Mokolo. Inhabitants of Mokolo say they boycotted the event due to fear and trauma caused by the recent Boko Haram attack in the area. Report says over 500 persons have been killed in Boko Haram-related attacks in the area since 2014. Enormous material damages has been recorded, with hundreds of thousands displaced, while Boko Haram continue to launch sporadic attacks.
Thank you so much, Malaglory, for that report. It brings us to the end of the first part of the news. Viewers, don't go away. Talking Points comes up next. We will be talking about press freedom in Cameroon. Stay with us. Welcome back, viewers. Our guest tonight is Charlene Zichia. He is a veteran journalist and he has been in the profession for over 30 years now and more. Charlene Zichia, thank you so much for accepting to be our guest on Talking Point tonight. It's an honor, it's a privilege. We are talking about press freedom. And now today, Cameroon is joining other countries to observe the World Press Freedom Day. And in our Cameroonian context, can we really be talking about a free press, Charlene Zichia?
Yeah, we can. But we can do that only with recourse to the hackneyed utterance of the one-time dictator and butcher of Uganda, Idi Amin Dada, who said, who is supposed to have said, or quoted to have said, well, you're talking of freedom of speech, freedom of speech. Yes, go ahead and have your freedom of speech. I guarantee you that. But I wouldn't guarantee you freedom after speech. That is the situation in which our press freedom, what is called press freedom in Cameroon is now.
From what you're saying, Charlene Zichia, it means press freedom in Cameroon is somehow limping. What can be the reason for that?
Quite a good number of frivolous cases where journalists are arrested and taken to court. Some of them are murdered outright. You want me to be repeating the fact that Bibingota died in detention. He had approached a top official of this nation to ask questions following an investigation that he was doing, and he never came out alive. You have Wazizi, who was taken away by an armed people, and almost a year afterwards, we only heard that he had been rendered food for the worms. He was dead meat. Recently, you have Martinez, who sang like a lark. He sang like a popinjay, and as we talk, he's cooling his feet in a dormitory, in a cold dormitory somewhere in Yaoundé. He's dead meat. So those who, if you want to take the risk, then of freedom of press in Cameroon, then adopt the principle of volentin, the principle of volentin non fit injuria, and face the music. You are like getting into a boxing ring with a giant called Mike Tyson, and thinking that you would avoid a black eye. No, Tyson will box the hell out of you. But since you voluntarily accepted to box with Mike Tyson, that is your cup of tea.
And now, according to you, Uncle Charlie, who should be responsible for the several problems, especially the threats journalists in Cameroon face almost on a daily basis as they go about their job?
I think that the system was designed in such a way as to render the journalism profession an all-comers enterprise, such that every Tom, Dick, and Harry got into it. And let me quickly note here that some of those, a good number of the journalists or reporters that have ended up in Sing Sing, that have ended up being arrested or run into trouble, ran their mouths pretty much. And they didn't, they just assumed that, okay, because I report for this media, I report for this, I can say anything and go scot-free. But those who are responsible is the people who created the troubling environment, those in government who accepted that the journalism landscape should be a cesspool for every gutter snipe.
And nowadays, Uncle Charlie, it is difficult to decipher between a journalist and quacks because quacks have invaded the profession in Cameroon recently. What's your take on that, and what can be done to ensure that journalists and journalism regain its respect and consideration?
I think that in this case, the few journalists, even now, let's be frank to ourselves. Let's be honest. Even those some of our colleagues who have passed, who were lucky to pass through the portals of journalism training institutions, are not better than the quacks. They are committing professionally heinous offenses that stink to the high heavens. But one way of getting rid of who you refer to as quacks is by simply being an undertaker for bad journalism. So you work in such a way, you operate in such a way that the quacks, as you call them, are ignored and are sentenced to the backwaters of what should be decent journalism.
And now, Charlene Dichao, you might also want to find out from you. You are a veteran journalist that all of us know, and you have been in the profession for several years now. Can you tell us, is it possible for a journalist to earn a living from the profession, from his or her job? And maybe can a low salary situation be a reason for the proliferation of gumbo journalism or yellow journalism?
It is practically difficult. Well, I remember Chiroma, my good friend, used to brag about the fact that there is press freedom in Cameroon because of the existence of 500 registered newspapers and more, because of proliferation of television and radio houses. And so, but that shouldn't be the yardstick for the measurement of good journalism. So it is there, fine. Those 500 people, 500 maybe 2,000 so-called employees of the place, and how do they get paid? The starvation wages that they are paid with. I call them starvation wages. Some of those that is supposed to be their take-home pay cannot even take them home. Somewhere along the line, there's just a sprinkling of media houses in this country that can actually satisfy those they employ financially, and that is CRTV, Cameroon Tribune, to some extent. I don't know about the man who is in Sing Sing for being linked up with Martinez, Vision Cat, and so on and so forth. Otherwise, what most of the reporters or media owners do now is a sorry thing. It's a sorry thing. It's just, as I call it, cocktail journalism, or journalism of the next of kin. They are on the bed partners or bed material for money bags and other dubious politicians and administrators. So they cut corners. To be very frank with you, it is difficult, especially in newspaper publishing in this country. In the English-speaking sector, it is better for the francophone media that they have those who buy, and then they have the advertising market. But you know the prurient and sleazy things that most of our publishers do in order to keep afloat, to stay afloat in the media landscape. It is hardly possible. You must cut corners. You can't earn your keep from practicing real journalism in this country. It's a lie. I have been there and I know. Except you compromise.
Charlene Dichao, we can't let you go without talking about the National Communication Council, which you master very well, the sanctions and the threats on media houses. We want to know from you what is actually the role of the National Communication Council, the NCC, and can we consider that organ as a toothless bulldog because it cannot sanction any media organ which is not towing the line?
It is not. It is not. I think we just need to contextualize some of these things. Don't push me into revealing a bit too much, because I was once I was a member of the National Communication Council for 17 years, and I know the inside out. You have a country in the governance has failed, and I think it is only left for it to collapse. And when it has, in that respect, you have this one going this way, and then institutions which are supposed to be operating under the same governance umbrella, parting ways and going their different directions. So the Communication Council comes out having meticulously taken a decision on A or B, and the onus is for the implementing authorities to do so. And an SDO here is saying, oh no, I cannot do it because of this. Oh no. I mean, somebody is seeing another, and envelopes are exchanging hands, and the job of the Communication Council is being scuttled. But if the Communication Council, and it has been doing that over and over, including those who took over from us, they've been doing it, they do their job, and then they deliver, and then they create releases to the fact that these are the decisions that have been taken. If the implementing authorities, the gendarmes, the governors, the ministers are not doing their job, it is not the job of the Communication Council. The Communication Council is not a gendarme. It is a regulator. It has done the regulation, and the law says that after you've done this, push it on to this guy or to this other arm of the system to execute. If they don't execute, you don't expect Joe Chebonkeng now to go around and say, okay, I've come to see you. It's not a gendarme. So you don't blame the Communication Council. You blame the near collapse of the system and the impunity with which everyone else does things in this country.
Thank you so much, Charlie Chair, for accepting to be our guest on Talking Point tonight, especially on the World Press Freedom Day. It was an honor. Viewers, we thank you so much for always being there. As usual, don't go away. Our programs continue. The news in the French language comes up at 8 p.m. And before, there would be Equinoxe by Search Alengo 2. Stay with us on Equinoxe Television. Bye-bye for now.